my friends are synths.
Recently, I put up a video talking about some of my personal trials and tribulations with Spotify, as well as some of the ethical and practical issues that had come up for me in the past few months, both as an artist and also, just as somebody who listens to music. When I released that video, I'd already made the decision to cancel my long-time Spotify subscription, largely over their CEO's investment in military technology, but I'm also somebody who's released quite a lot of music on their platform, and so in that video I specifically spoke at some length about the complicating factors involved as a small-time musician who was potentially going to be pulling all of my music from what is by far the largest streaming platform in the world. Now that video generated quite a lot of commentary, which I'll come on to speak about, but the whole process of doing this and thinking through everything ultimately led me on to a couple of conclusions. Firstly, irrespective of what consequences there may or may not be from doing so, I no longer want to be associated with Spotify in any form, and so I've decided to pull all of my past and future music from their platform. Secondly, given that shift in what it involves, I want to kind of reset my relationship with putting out music and not just spunk my next album onto the internet via a digital distributor that doesn't give a shit. And so I've decided that for my next release, I will be self-funding a limited edition vinyl record. So if you're somebody who spoke about how independent artists should just ditch Spotify entirely and the importance of supporting those who do directly, then now is the chance to put your money where your mouth is and pre-order a record over at shop.allmyfriendsaresynths.com. The truth is that putting out a record like this is going to cost me a significant amount of cash up front, and to be honest, even if I somehow magically sell all of these, which I definitely won't, the profit involved will be minimal to non-existent. However, I do think it's worth doing, partly to escape some of the digital monopoly, also to hopefully make sure I don't totally slip into a black hole of irrelevance by not being on Spotify, but also just, for my own sanity. So, by way of a thank you, if you pre-order a record now, until the end of October 2025, you will get about 20% off the ultimate release price when the record comes out in a few months. So, thank you very much in advance. I genuinely appreciate it. The plan will be to ultimately go out on some kind of UK tour next year to support the release, so do keep an eye out for that on Instagram or on here. If you personally put on gigs or know anybody that does and would be willing to have me, also please do get in touch as well and we can see what we can do. Now when it comes to Spotify, as I mentioned, I've now definitively decided to completely sever my relationship with them, pulling all of the music that I've ever personally released from the platform. And in some ways, that was actually quite an easy decision to make when it came down to it, but in other ways, it was also one that I wanted to stop, think and talk about, rather than just rushing into blindly. As part of the discussion, I received lots of thoughtful comments and messages from other artists who were also struggling with similar uncertainties and doubts, but also got a fair bit of moralising pushback, with people taking what I feel was, a bit of an unreasonably hard line at times. Specifically, a good number of folks left remarks which suggested, or in fact explicitly stated, that anybody who uses or has ever used Spotify is somehow ethically deficient, both as a musician and presumably a human being. That no serious artist would ever have engaged with the platform in the first place, and that anybody who hasn't already ditched Spotify long ago is somehow complicit in crimes against both the arts and humanity. The overarching tone and position of these kinds of comments seemed to be that because I was speaking openly about some of the real reservations and considerations involved for small artists, as opposed to, just saying, fuck Spotify, that meant that I wasn't taking the issues involved seriously enough. And to be honest, I think that's fucking bullshit. For a start, there are plenty of artists out there who aren't openly talking or thinking about these issues, and attacking people who are seems bizarrely counterproductive. The reality is that all of us are trapped in an unjust system where there are no simple answers, and we each have to make and live with our own individual choices and inconsistencies. Whether you choose to buy a MacBook or, drink Coke, for example, go to McDonald's, or use any products and services by other global companies who've got clear histories of questionable activity, that is incredibly difficult to do with any scale. And so having an open and honest conversation about the challenges involved in such a thing is really important. Just reducing nuanced topics down to these easy slogans and reactionary positions which fling insults from a moral high ground misses the point entirely and frankly just makes you seem like a bit of a dick. In terms of the actual machinations, I'm currently actively in the process of pulling all my own music from Spotify. However, it will take a bit of time. Over almost 2 decades, I've released a lot of different music in varying levels of quality under different artist names with different distributors. And as you might imagine, it isn't quite as easy as just flipping a switch and getting rid of them all immediately. I'm having to go through and find all of these releases individually, and that all takes quite a bit of time and effort. There will no doubt be the odd release here or there which is still live on Spotify for a variety of reasons, including some bands that I've been in where I don't have the sole distribution rights, or indeed just accounts that I've lost the password to. So don't come for me in the comments about why this release or that is still available when you see this, because it's complicated to do and I'm in the process of doing it the best I can. Now I should say that whilst I no longer have any time for Spotify as a company, I still appreciate and recognise the convenience of streaming services, particularly when it comes to exploring new music before I buy it. Now I completely understand and agree with many of the problems that people have got with the streaming model generally, but I'm not quite ready to leave that ecosystem entirely. There is a lot to be said for building up a library of your own media as an alternative, and I personally buy, collect and listen to a lot of physical media including CDs and vinyl records, as well as digital releases from Bandcamp. And I would very much encourage you to support the artists that you like by doing the same. However, I also know from bitter experience that a library like that just isn't all that straightforward to manage or maintain. If you've ever tried to update an old iPod, for example, you will appreciate how much of a pain in the arse it can be, and why something centralised like Spotify not only feels, but operates so much better. Because of that, I have maintained a streaming subscription, but switched over to Tidal. Its user interface is just as friendly as Spotify, but is also cheaper, with higher quality audio, at least for now, and markedly less evil. That might not always be the case, but for now, I would gently invite you to explore alternatives like Tidal if you're going to stick with using or distributing to a streaming service. In the meantime, if you've called me or anybody else complicit in genocide for not deleting my music off of Spotify before any of this was ever a real question, then you are now duty-bound to go and pre-order a copy of my new album at shop.allmyfriendsaresynths.com. And I will look forward to all of your guilt-induced penance purchases. Thank you, and goodbye.